A little bit on the time, but that was extremely important to share the information. Said a minute ago, 75% of our budget, county budget, is spent in general on public safety and education. So those are the next two segments. We felt like it was important to have a discussion with about public safety. So Sheriff Robbie Holland is here, and also David Keith is here. David's our Director of Emergency Services. And Robbie's getting ready to report out that we've got a couple of new media folks that are with us, and so I'm trying to find out who these people are. If you guys get an agenda so you know who the people are, introduce yourself to us, both of you. Tell us who you're with.
My name is Ryan Camchet. I'm with the Franklin Press. I spent the last 6 years in Goldsboro. Glad to be out of Wayne County and into Macon County.
You're in God's country.
Well,
I've been to Goldsboro.
I'm from West Virginia, so I love the mountains. And, I'm really glad to be here, and I look forward to putting names and faces as we go along. So, thanks for everything you guys have done.
My name is Holland. I'm with the Smoky Mountain News. From Maryland originally, but I just moved here from Wyoming, so it's really good to be back in these mountains again.
We're glad to have you. And we didn't introduce everybody. This is Commissioner Jim Tate. Jim represents District 1, which is roughly the Highlands and a couple of precincts close to Highlands. Commissioner Ronnie Beal, District 2 representative. He's been Commissioner since '06. Is that right? And Commissioner Ron Haven is not here. He had a previous commissioner. He's also District 2 representative. Paul Heaton is a Commissioner representing District 3, which is Nantahala, Cowie, Town, Carthage, please. And I'm Kevin Corbin. In my second term, I actually took Jim Davis, Jim Davis in the Senate. He asked me to consider taking his seat, and I did, and then was reelected last year, so I'm happy to take my second term, I suppose. And county manager, our new county manager is Derek Rowland, our county attorney. With today. Mike Decker is our HR guy, among other hats. Lori Hollybeck is our finance officer.
Usually they have name tags, so it's not so confusing. So, and I had somebody introduce all of them to me when I started reporting. I work for the newspaper in town, Smoky Mountain, or the Macon County News, sorry. So I just thought you guys might want to know who they are when they're talking. It might be a little easier for you.
And just so you know, Brittany told me.
They have name plaques at meetings, but somebody didn't bring them today, so.
All right, so moving on, public safety. Sheriff Holland.
First of all, thank you. I'll admit that I wasn't really sure what I needed to put together today, so I've been working all week putting something together, but I've made it a lot briefer than it was. But don't thank me for that. You can thank my 3-year-old who deleted my project last night. But I do have a little bit, and I'm going to skip through some of it to get to a couple of important things that I want to make you aware of. First of all, a number of calls that our agency responded to. Franklin Police, you can see, responded to that many. Highlands Police to that many. And the Sheriff's Office responded to that many calls this past year. In addition to those 911 calls through David Key's staff, we also had non-emergency calls where people called the Sheriff's Office, and that's an additional 16,753 or 758. And then we had 16,000 individuals walk in to the Sheriff's Office for some reason or another. Basically what I'm saying is that's 129 contacts with members in our community that an employee of the Sheriff's Office makes contact with the community. And I'm going to skip some of this. Okay, one of the main issues, and Mr. Beal talked about, Mr. Beal being our liaison, is our involuntary commitments. Our number of, this is a 2011 document that I presented to you all. Number of commitments in 2011 were up 38%. Number of officers, 140% increase. Number of hours was 133% increase. Time per commitment increased by 75%. Well, I'm here to tell you it hasn't gotten any better. And you can see how they have increased the number of commitments. Involuntary commitments is what that's when somebody is suffering from a mental health issue and somebody takes out a court order to have them involuntarily committed to receive help. In 2013, it's now 218 commitments. And here you will see how it's increased in the number of hours. Basically, in 2006, we were at a meeting, myself and Major Shields, and they questioned the paperwork and the number of information that we had. Basically, at that time, what we learned was our numbers and the mental health system numbers were different. But what happened was during that meeting when they questioned how we come up with our numbers because they didn't think it was right. Basically, what we learned is if Jane Doe, sorry to use Jane, sorry.
That's fine.
If Jane Doe gets committed today and gets committed 3 more times this year, instead of that being considered 4 commitments, that's 1 commitment. When the reality of it is, each time that individual is committed, it doesn't matter if she's been committed 40 times, she starts all over and goes through the entire process again. And so in 2012, if Jane Doe is committed, it's an average of 30 hours in 2012, well actually 2013. It's an average of 40 hours that my officers, 1 or 2 officers, depending male or female, will have to stay with that individual before they're ever transported to a facility. That doesn't include the time that they spend transporting that person. They may be transported to Haywood County, or they may be transported to the coast of North Carolina. Then in a few days, when they're found to be okay and released, then they will call us, and by law, we're required to go and pick that individual back up and bring them back home. 1,518 officers in 2013 spent 8,663 hours with a cost of $203,275 just on involuntary commitments. Of course, we drove 23,000 miles to do it. I'm going to skip that too. Projects that I see that when I present my budget to you, and I guess it was March that it said, these are the 3 main issues that I think that will come to your attention as our biggest increase. One of the first one, and I've made it very clear to all of you, that the school resource officers was very important to me, and that I wouldn't be asking for any more position over the next few years until I've had an officer assigned to every school in our school system. And I'm committed to doing that, and I intend to not ask for any positions again this year, with the exception of a school resource officer. I told y'all last year we needed 4. I asked for 2, and you all were kind enough to give me at least 1 of them. And I appreciate that, and that position has worked out well. I will do that again this year, but I won't be asking for the 3. Our vehicle, I continue to try to get back into the program that the commissioners unanimously supported a few years ago. Within a year or 2 after I took office, we had to buy 12 or 15 vehicles to try to recover for a dilapidated bunch of vehicles that we had. Officers were breaking down. And so we've come up with, we had 10 plans. 1 being the very best, 10 being another plan, but on a scale of 1 to 10, number 1 being the best choice. Commissioners chose to go with the number 1 choice, and that was 5 or 6 vehicles every year. And at the end of 5 or 6 years, those vehicles you bought the first year, you would start rotating and replacing. And a few years ago, our economy went south, as everybody knows, so we eliminated that policy that we had set in place. Well, now we've come to a time where we've got 25 vehicles that are just assigned to the patrol unit. That's only to the patrol unit. Of those, we average 20 to 25,000 miles a year per car. 7 of our vehicles have over 100,000 miles. And a lot of people think that really 100,000 miles isn't really a whole lot of miles, but that 100,000 miles on a patrol vehicle that's road hard is a lot of miles, and they break down and you end up spending. And we proved that several years ago when we implemented our plan. We start spending way more than the cars are even worth. So anyway, we've got 7 vehicles that are over 100,000. Our 2 4-wheel drives, we were in a panic during this last snow because our 2 4-wheel drives that are on the road, they're in poor condition. And so you figure all those numbers I'm telling you, in the next year, you're going to add another 20 to 25,000 miles to each of those vehicles. 9 vehicles that we currently have now, we expect to be needing to replace them in the next 2 years.
Rob, you got, that's on the rotator. You got that in your budget to replace 6?
No, we don't. I think what happened last year, and Lori can correct me if I'm wrong, I think you all eliminated that, but last year they felt the need that they agreed we needed to replace some cars, and so didn't they take a loan last year, or did,
you got 6 cars in your current budget,
It's in the budget.
and we didn't borrow any money to do that.
Okay.
That's in the budget.
Okay.
I think last year you got 5 or 6 too.
Okay, well, we plan to do that again this year. And the reason I put these are the 3 main things, or there's going to be a 4th here in a minute, but that's the main things that we're going to be asking for. And if it's already in the budget, we're good, but I want you to be aware that and the reason I brought that up is I know that for some on the commission, our cars are a concern. And so I'm just wanting to make sure everybody is aware. We are going to ask for that and explain why.
It's like we talked today about ambulances. I think we all recognize the need for the vehicle, but let's don't get to a point where you have to replace all of it. Let's do it methodically and put it in the budget, and let's
Absolutely.
It's just like we talked about with the school stuff a while ago. The problem we got into was that wasn't done in the past. Wait, it's a crisis, and so
Right.
Let's don't do that. Let's replace them.
Our officers, EMS, they have to get to that emergency call. And a prime example is on New Year's Eve. We all worked. A lot of our officers were called into work. We had an individual involved in a shooting who was shooting at his wife. She took off. He hit the woods. We had to go to Nantahala to do a manhunt and to find this, but the responding officer on the way there broke down. He's got one of these high mileage cars that today is running fine, but you put him on a hot call to Nantahala, there's no guarantee that he's going to make that. And so you had a delay in time, and thank God he didn't kill her. Now, having said that, that's another story. I know you were going to that case. But anyway, in other words, he's not charged anymore. He's been released because the victim refuses to testify. They're back in love, I guess. But anyway, but we still have to get to those calls. Yeah, that's a quote. We still have to get to them. No, it's not a quote.
Whatever you say here's going to be in the paper.
But anyway, that happens a lot in our cases, but we still have to get there because we don't know what the situation is. And it's just like when you deal with the situations in Highlands and people complain that we didn't have an officer, a long time ago in Highlands. If we all needed 911 and we needed a deputy and they were all coming out of Highlands to get to us, we would be upset. And so I understand the situation in Highlands, and that's why we took care of that, thanks to the support of our commissioners. The other big item that you're going to see, and also back to the vehicles, I do not decide which vehicles are replaced. I don't know if that even matters to you all, but I don't make the final decision on what cars are replaced and which deputies get new patrol cars. We allow maintenance supervisor, who's in charge of all the vehicles, to decide which vehicle. He makes recommendations to me and Andy. Listen, we've put enough money into this vehicle. We've put 3 transmissions into it. We're wasting tax dollars. And he makes a recommendation, and so far we've taken his recommendation. Now, some of those vehicles that we've had that he's recommended taking off the road, we've put somewhere else. For instance, school resource officers. Sometimes we have to, if we get physicians and we hire somebody and we don't get a vehicle to replace that for that SRO, we've got to have a vehicle for them. And so we'll take those old vehicles, but they're not putting the miles like the patrol officers are. Another big cost, and I'm going to tell you the amount is between $20,000 and $30,000 to repair the roof on the detention center. I don't know if that's the accurate amount. I don't know anything about that. Our maintenance supervisor for the county, Steve Ledford, is aware of the problem, and I've talked to my lieutenant in the jail who's working with Steve on that. They are in the process of finding out the exact amount that it's going to cost to repair that roof. But I've been told it's somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000, maybe $50,000. But that's one of those high dollar items that I think you're going to see or you will see in the upcoming budget. I just don't know the price of what that's going to be at this time. The fourth and final thing that I'm going to be requesting has to do with special funds. Special funds are those monies that are provided to law enforcement, and I'm going to pass this around and let everybody look at this. And I need to make sure I get that back, and I'll explain in a little while. Special funds, this is considered what you would call an ounce of methamphetamine. And special funds are those monies that are provided to law enforcement to be primarily used for the investigative expenses such as the undercover purchase of narcotics and stolen property and payments to confidential informants. Macon County Sheriff's Office has very restrictive controls over our special funds to include multiple witnesses and signatures, which is really important, and to make payments and purchases and administrative oversight and approval for all transactions. Now, just to relieve you a little bit, this is really only rock salt, but it looks exactly like methamphetamine.
Just about had a heart attack.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'll be honest with you. You know, I hope my legacy is a positive thing someday. But I did have the image of if something happened to me on the way to this meeting, and they found me on the side of the road, and put this out of my pocket, that would be my legacy. So I was kind of worried about that. The fact of the matter is, it takes money for us to be able to do undercover stings and to be able to buy these drugs and to make successful cases. That's your best way. You can go on information and you can initiate investigations, but it's difficult for us to be able to make cases based on you're suspicious that Joe Blow down the street, I didn't use Jane Doe that time, Joe Blow down the street, there's a lot of traffic coming in and out of his house, and we can stop vehicles all day long coming out of his house, and we do that, and we make, but it takes a great deal more to earn the probable cause, to get the probable cause.
And this is another thing that Robbie will tell you, there was grants available for at one time. You could get some from the state. You could get some grant money for drug enforcement. But that money is
There's
gone away.
a lot of grants that have been out there. When they were there, Macon County, or at least the Sheriff's Office, was limited on what grants that we could actually get. And we were denied a lot of grants because of the fact that our stats were good, our crime rate was good, our financial standing within the state was good. And so that hurt us. Now, they won't put that in writing and tell you that, but we were told.
You get penalized because
What we've done is we've been receiving $1,000 a year since the early 90s for our drug buy money. That's the total amount of money that we had for drug buy money, $1,000 per year. Go through this, you all know what the trends are with the drugs. Okay, this is one case in 2011. Okay, with that $1,000, over 20 defendants were arrested, 2 pounds of methamphetamine. That little bag that I just showed you, for us to go buy that undercover, that's $1,700 worth of methamphetamine right there. Okay, $1,700. We got 2 pounds of methamphetamine. Approximately $7,000 in funds. 2,000 of Macon County funds were used, and substantial assets received. In 2012, 19 defendants were arrested, $20,000 in special funds were used. Now, we had the 1,000. It took $5,100 more from the SBI. It took $6,100 more from the DEA, $4,000 more from OSDA, and $1,500 from the Highlands Police Department to make that possible, to be able to take those drugs off the street and put that many people involved in a massive drug ring. We seized, in one investigation, we seized 8 vehicles, $3,500 in precious metals. We seized $691,000 in property, one of those being a motel, $42,000 in cash. We served 18 federal bills of indictment with 4.5 pounds of methamphetamine. And last week, or 2 weeks ago, we learned that the last defendant in that case just pled guilty and was sentenced to either 36 or 38 years in federal prison. So that was a successful case.
Before, hate to break in when you got
go right ahead.
money seized during these, when you service the warrant. Anything that's seized
And it goes into evidence.
goes into evidence.
And
the
someday, we will get a portion of that money as well as all the other agencies that are involved. It's divided out amongst several different agencies. And a lot of our drug investigations include Highlands Police, Franklin Police, the SBI, the DEA, the FBI, U.S. Forest Service, Jackson County Sheriff's Office, Swain County Sheriff's Office, multiple agencies. If we receive $10,000 in seizures, and at the end of that, the judge will award that money go to law enforcement for special purposes. And then that money is divided amongst all those different agencies.
For instance, the motel file that you referred to, the federal government owns that motel. So if that's back on the market and they are interested in that motel. So when that motel sells, by the time it goes through all the loops, they will be some money to come return to Macon County. Doesn't know how much, or what
It
it's
may be
selling for.
3 years from now.
Yeah.
when that hits the county, how's it handled?
It goes into a special
special
fund, and
revenue
she will explain that to you.
We have a special revenue fund for any of the monies he's talking about when they do seize funds or property, and if it's sold or awarded back to the county. We have a special fund. I think we recently, I've been at your last board meeting, one of the budget amendments, or the meeting before, we allocated those, and we have to track that every year. It has to be in that special fund. So let's say, for example, June of 2013, if they had $5,000 left in that special revenue fund, then that was part of that budget amendment that y'all approved. We have to carry those funds forward because they have to be used for specific purposes.
It raising that carry over.
Yes, and it keeps rolling over, you know, what they don't use gets rolled forward to the new year. And then, of course, any funds we receive, you know, get appropriated to that fund to be spent for specific purposes as laid out in the law.
And it's very laid out in the law, very specific of what we're allowed to use. For instance, and correct me if I'm wrong, the county commissioners can't come to me and say, okay, you have enough money in your special funds to buy 2 vehicles. You want 5 cars, we're gonna give you money for 3, and we want you to take the money out of there and use it for those.
No, it should stay, that fund right there.
And that has never been attempted since I've been
No, it
sheriff, and I
won't.
can't speak for any other sheriff, and I appreciate that, but we've never had to fight that battle.
No, you shouldn't. That fund ought to be, I think fighting death in Macon County is more important than speeders on 441 SROs or anything else. There's no use educating a child if you're gonna lose them on meth. And we've lost hundreds of them in this county, good families. You know, you see it.
It's not just meth, but it's also, in fact, the bigger than meth is prescription drug abuse. There's more, it is.
Yeah,
I'm telling
but
you.
that meth leaves, it actually
Absolutely.
burns your brain.
Absolutely, but so does the pills, and there's been more, nationwide, there's been more deaths because of prescription drug abuse than heroin and cocaine and methamphetamine combined.
What is that, the hydrocodone, oxycodone?
All of them. You name the
Any of
prescription
them.
drug, any of the narcotics, the kids are taking,
they're shooting,
they're selling, they're shooting, they're snorting, they're eating.
Tablets, those oxycodone, they got them. Good for them shooting them. What's that fund usually run? What's the average balance of that?
I don't know the average balance, but I can tell you that last fiscal year, they spent about $43,000.
And that was in the fund.
That was within that special fund.
We don't know what the balance, how much is there today though, or?
I don't know.
I mean, if we're just contributing $1,000, if we're adding to that $1,000 a year, and there's $40,000 in
Well,
it.
the $1,000 he spoke of is within his sheriff's budget.
Yeah, that's what we
It's
donate
not
each
in
year.
this special fund. The special fund we're speaking is only forfeitures, federal and state drug forfeiture monies that come back to the county as those cases are settled and the funds are divvied up.
But we give 1,000 line item.
You give,
In
you
the
give me
special fund.
That's
$1,000,
kind of drug buy money.
you give me $1,000 for drug buy money, and then, and we've got 40,000, as she said, in forfeitures. That $1,000 plus all the other thousands of dollars that other agencies came in on us with and got, helped us get that money that can only be used for certain things.
Yeah, but that $41,000 can be used for drug buy. That's all it can be used for.
Correct. No,
No,
I'm sorry, no, that's not correct.
The
Because we can
43,000.
use that for special equipment,
Equipment.
different things. For instance, if we decide that tomorrow we want to buy there's 40,000. We wanted tomorrow to buy 40,000 undercover cameras or recorders and different tools that we use for investigative purposes. We can use that fund to buy that.
Can you use that to buy drugs as well? Out of that fund?
Correct. And we've done that. We've actually had gone to the county and.
We did the budget amendment, I think, to get some additional drug
Correct.
buy monies out of that. That might have been last year or the year before.
But the problem we have is that $1,000, if we have $1,000, we have to get other agencies on board with us. If they don't, if the state or federal level, they're after the big guys, okay? They're not really concerned about the little guy that's selling to the kid at the high school. They're worried about the guy that is selling to the supplier who's getting the drugs for the little guy that's selling to the even little guy. But if we can't get them involved, if these other agencies don't even get involved, and you saw the thousands of dollars that they helped us with this case. If they don't get involved, then we're stuck. We can't go ahead and initiate that case because we don't have the money. We don't have the funds to go ahead and initiate an undercover drug campaign. So my whole purpose in telling you that is I want you to know up front that since the 90s we've gotten $1,000. And in this budget, I'm going to ask for $20,000. I'm going to ask for that $20,000, and then I'm going to tell you this: if give me 2 years, we'll be able to account for every dime that $20,000 goes to in drug investigation. At the end of 2 years, if we've not shown you progression in what we've used that $20,000 for, take it away from me. Don't give me the money anymore. But I'm convinced, my drug guys are convinced, that if we had more drug money, because at least, and Charles Moody is over my drug unit in my investigation, there's cases at least a couple of times a week where when we staff, we have to decide whether we're going to work that case or initiate that case or not. And a lot of times, 99% of the time, the reason we can't initiate that investigation into that and have to go on this investigation is because we don't have the funds to initiate that investigation. We don't have the money to go and buy those drugs from somebody undercover to initiate that. And that is your best resource of getting into a drug investigation is your undercover buys, your recorded buys. That is the best way to, and you use a heck of a lot less resources doing it. Because if you go just on the fact that somebody's coming to Jane Doe's house all hours of the night and going back and forth, you can sit up there, you can take cause to stop them, that's great. And if you may even find a little bit of meth, you may even find a little bit of pills on that individual. But if they don't give you information and they don't tell you that they got it at that house, you just sat there for 8 hours and watched this individual and you can't get into that house anyway. Because you have nothing that tells you, nothing that you can show in a court
But
of
if
law.
you buy it, you
but
got
that-
first-hand information.
Absolutely, you got officers that can testify in court, and a lot of times you have video, undercover video of that
The
person.
best evidence you got, just what happened in Graham County. They brought in a person, an undercover person. It was a very expensive investigation. I forget how many we arrested. It was numerous people. That's how they had to do it. They
That's how-
tried that way. They tried your way, Robbie, it didn't work.
Right.
And you know how it worked.
And that's how all these cases that I talked about in the quantities, that's why these cases are successful, is because luckily these other agencies came in with us, helped us provide the funds to do it. We've actually had a case here in Macon County where we needed $50,000 to front money to make a purchase. And luckily, at the time, the county manager made that available to us, and we had, we did a buy bust. Show us the money, we got the money, just like you see on TV, and we were able to make. But if we didn't have access to funds to do that, we wouldn't be able to.
I've lost something earlier on. When this seizure money comes back in to the county, you said there's $43,000 spent out of that?
That's what was spent last budget year. And
Last
it's gonna,
budget
of
year.
course, vary on what they receive. They can only spend what they receive or any fund balance carried over from the prior year.
One of those purchases was for a vehicle for one of the officers. That's one of the purchases we made.
Would it be a bad idea to use that money, tag that money just to be used for your drug bust? Any special equipment come through the regular budget process, cameras, cars, or whatever, for your drug agents? Would it be a better idea?
In a perfect world, it would be nice if we could do that, but sometimes we need equipment that certain individuals are a purse string and we can't get, such as county commissioners. You guys are the ones that decide what funds we get. And every year we ask and make requests for information. And we try to explain everything to you all of what we need. And if we can't get certain things to do our job, then we have to have resources such as this to be able to divvy into. And if we would say that we're not going to use that money ever except for drug buy money, then there's a chance that some of the equipment that we've bought in the past here, and some since you've been on the board, some way long before you were on the board, we would never have if not for the work of these officers and getting these forfeitures. There's some things we have to have. And that's a way for us to get some of those things. And it's not things that I can just go out and say, this is what I want. I have to.
But it's at your discretion, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd rather see every penny that we get go for
Absolutely.
drug purchase and equipment and everyday items that we need to be presented to the board and either approved or denied.
You can't, it's difficult to do that. You're talking about at the beginning of a budget program.
Yeah,
not
because you're
in
asking for
midstream.
money either way, either to buy equipment or
Because
buy
the last thing I
drug
want to have to do is come and say, okay, we're going to work a case starting next week. So I wasn't sure what you meant. Sir?
I would say we still need to get to David.
Okay.
Just one quick thing, Robbie, back to the mental health thing, the $200,000 beginning Monday at 3 o'clock. I presented that evidence yesterday in Raleigh to people that James certainly knows, Flo's team. Dave Richards, that's the director, deputy director of mental health services. We do have some things that if we hadn't had, don't tell what Robbie's budget been, like the walk-in center. But if we're going to push now, soon, that these deputies can now take these folks to a walk-in center, not the ER. Just to give you an idea of where we're at, and Robbie can tell you, we just had juveniles that are staying 7 days in the ER and the hospital breaking the commitment now, we told them to send them. So once we give them to them, and that process starts Monday at 3 o'clock in Asheville, we have the first meeting of the new board. The LA meeting will now go to Guilford County. So we hope that that's some monies that we hope, Robbie, that if we had that, half that money, say $100,000, that's a resource officer, that's money you're talking about for you need in your pool, and it's better help for the client, so.
Mr. Corbin, I apologize, but I'm going to buck a little bit and ask to speak about one more thing. But before I say that, I welcome all of my commissioners. Come to my office, call me, I'll come to your house, we'll sit down and we'll talk about any issues that you have or concerns, because while I may not have all the answers right here in front of me, I guarantee you I'll get the answer for you, and I'll make you feel better about the decision you make. I'm confident of it. Your job is to look for wasteful spending, and my challenge. No, I know that. I know you're not. But what I'm saying is, your job is to make sure that we as department heads aren't wasting money. So as one department head, I challenge you, look through there. If you find anything that is questionable and you're concerned about, and I mean that for the public too, let me know, and I can guarantee you I can make you feel better, because I can show you in black and white why I'm asking for that.
No, I appreciate you educating all of us on this special fund.
Yep.
We're all need to fight this drug thing, Nick.
Last but not least, you all told me when I asked for the 2 SROs last year, you all encouraged me, even though we were not getting grants, to go ahead and keep trying to find grants. There were no grants. I was appointed by the governor to sit on the Safe Schools Task Force in December. My very first meeting, I was made aware of a grant. While I was sitting in the desk with all those 20 other individuals in Raleigh, I texted Mr. Baldwin and told him, I know of a grant. They encouraged me to get with my superintendent and apply for this grant. That money was available, they've extended it because people hadn't asked for the funds. We've applied, and about 4 o'clock yesterday, we received word that we were approved for a grant for one position. Our portion is 1/3 of that position. As I presented to you all last year for a full-time school resource officer, it was $84,000, and that was their training, their vehicle, everything, for one position. The state is going to has agreed to give us $39,722. Our portion is $18,185 for the county's portion. Now, that doesn't add up to $84,000. So I'm going to do what I have to do every single year, and a lot of people would say, don't offer this up front, make you all offer it. So what I'm going to tell you is, this is very important to me. I think it's important to our community, and I will do what I do every single time you all end up giving me a new position. I won't ask for a patrol car. I won't ask for certain things that equals that $84,000. I'll find that in my current budget. I'll find a vehicle, maybe a dilapidated vehicle, but I'll find a vehicle or take a vehicle that we're going to take off the road and give them. And so basically, instead of asking for $84,000, I'm asking for $18,000 and to support the school system and myself in putting an additional SRO. An SRO would be full-time in the Nantahala area. I already have somebody in place ready to go. He's already certified. He's already been to SRO school. He's already working for me. In fact, he's already doing the SRO's job to a certain point, but he's not in that position because I can't supplant the position. I don't know if you can vote on it today, but I'd like for you all to discuss it and encourage you. The money's there. We're ready to go.
Money's in our account.
It's a priority to the school system and myself, and it's up to you all to make the call. And I don't know what we need to do next on that.
Okay. I don't think we can vote today's executive session. This is not.
Well, I think actually you've got a recessed regular meeting.
This is.
You're in a recessed regular meeting, so I think you can take up any matter that doesn't require a public hearing.
What's our balance of contingency?
If I remember correctly, I think it was $143,000 the other night before we made any actions, and I can't remember how much, did we use any of that contingency?
You need how much, Robbie? 18?
The county's portion is $18,185
Is that for a year?
for
No,
1
it's a
year.
grant. No,
1 year.
It's a 1 year grant.
1 year. And this is what you all encouraged me to do. You said we're going to give you one instead of the two, but keep trying to get grants, and that's what we're doing.
Mr. Chairman, this is a goal we've had set for a long time. I make the motion, we approve the sheriff's request out of contingency for grant matching for school resource officer. 18,100 and whatever.
This happened last night, and I tried to get a hold of people, but weren't able to get a hold of everybody.
18,185. Now, who's holding the grant funds? Y'all have them in your coffers?
We have the 39.
You have the 39, okay. And we have, so we'll do the 18. So
that's
how's it
exactly
gonna,
what
how are we gonna coordinate that? We hire the person, so we pay the person.
Lori, I have a line item for contracted services, and I can just issue the check to the
Okay.
county for
All right.
contracted
Well, we really need the budget amendment then for the whole amount, with part from contingency and part would
From the
be
school system.
grant from the school.
They'll be reimbursed to you. The grant will be
To the county.
reimbursed. But actually, out now, we're spending is 18.
But do you see what I'm saying? We need a budget amendment for the whole amount. We're gonna have to appropriate the whole
Just the whole-
57,907.
All that will be in our budget.
18,185's contingency, and then the 39,722,
Be
like
paid
Andy
from the
said,
school.
the school would write us a check for that. Does that make sense?
Motion stands, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I'd like to see us run through the regular budget thing, ain't no budget cycle. I thought today was,
The problem with that is by then it'll be 6 months old and we won't be able to utilize the money next year. It's my understanding, am I correct in that? That's funding that's available this year, will that?
I would need to issue the check by June 30th. Or it reverts back.
and how long, what's the cycle of that grant? It's good for 1 year.
1 year.
And then next year, we assume the whole,
But you're paying the officer now.
Do what?
You're paying the officer, you're not talking about hiring a new person.
Yes.
Yes,
I
he
am.
would.
You are
He would
I
move
am.
that person to probably.
I have a person ready to go in that position. That person is right now a full-time patrol officer, but I have him stationed in Nantahala and also handling that school.
I'm saying you're paying him now.
Correct.
He's not working for free.
Correct, but what's happened is when you all did not give me the position, I felt a need that it needed to happen anyway. So I took a full-time deputy's position, made my patrol officer shift fall short. So you've got a shift that's out there falling short, one man, because I put this officer in Nantahala handling this. So what'll happen is he will now be able to go, if it's been approved, he'll be able to go into that full-time SRO position, and then I can take that other shift that's one man short and put somebody into that position and put a full shift on that.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
so we'll require hiring one more guy.
Right.
The SRO.
Yeah, and we discussed that last budget session, and I think our thing was, we'll take this up in the next budget cycle, and that's why, that would be my only concern.
Okay, got a discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Robbie, is that?
Kevin, I have a question.
Yes.
At one point, you guys were considering asking the town of Franklin to fund the SRO the way Highlands has. Has that moved anywhere? Is that, no?
They applied, didn't they? Did they apply for an SRO, or did the Franklin Police Department just apply for? Was it an SRO grant, or was
You'll
it?
have to ask them. I mean, I know the answer to that, but I think it would be inappropriate for me to answer for them, because I know the answer, but. I
So
think it
you've
would be
asked them
inappropriate.
to fund the position like Highlands, and you've not,
Excuse me?
you've asked them to fund it, this SRO position the way Highlands has?
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh, you have not?
No, I haven't asked.
Not you.
Not you, but I mean the county.
Oh,
It has
I
been
don't-
encouraged at the Franklin Police Department. It has, yes.
We've not officially asked.
Weren't you gonna do that, though? I
They've
thought
had
someone
those
was gonna-
discussions, and I know they've had those discussions, and like Robbie, I think that would be a question for Mr. Cave and the mayor.
I know the chief of police stance on school resource officers. I can tell you that. And he supports the school resource officer program.
Mhm.
But as far as what they've applied for, I can't say.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, now, sorry, didn't mean to rush. A little bit behind with some important stuff. I talked to David, and he needs about 10 minutes. When David's finished, we'll take a short break. We've been